Hello, and welcome to Your Brand Express podcast, the podcast where business owners, authors, coaches get a chance to articulate their processes and how they express their brands. With your hosts, Carl and CJ Aline. Get your favorite cup of coffee or tea and get a notepad and enjoy the ride. Are you a coach, author, speaker, or service provider who is afraid of speaking on camera? Join the Confident Video Star Nation to overcome your fear. Connect with other professionals, gain access to exclusive resources, trainings, and tools, and learn the skills to become a confident video star. Join now and start your journey to success. Go to Facebook and type in Confident Video Star Nation and join the nation today. All right, everyone. We are hanging out with the man, Enin Rudel. How you doing, Enin?
I'm good, man. I'm thrilled to be here with both of you today. Looking forward to it.
Right on. Well, man, it's great to have you aboard. We know each other, and I've seen you on LinkedIn. I've seen some of your work on LinkedIn, and just really impressed and very inspired. To see African American male doing his thing and really just leading the way and inspiring people and breaking barriers. So, man, for our audience, this is an honor to have Enin, to have you on board.
I appreciate it, man. And what I could say from my perspective, I mean, I've been watching the both of you. I love this platform. And the idea of having a father and son, particularly of color, engaging in conversations like this, it's a beautiful thing. And so I thank you both for what you're doing, and thank you for inviting me on your show today.
Right on. Well, it's an honor. Thank you. Right. CJ, want to get into it?
Yeah. Honestly, I just wanted to know a little bit about you, more about your story, and just give us a little rundown about like who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So I'll say this. I wear a few hats at the moment. So it really began for me. Let me back up for a bit. So I served as a therapist for a number of years, and that served as a catalyst for what I'm now involved in. Right. So I went from diagnosing individuals as a therapist to now diagnosing organizations as an organizational psychologist. So I hold a doctorate in organizational leadership psychology with a focus in the neuroscience of leadership. And in the last probably 3-4 years, since the murder of George Floyd, I've been working heavily in the space of DE&I, specifically helping organizations improve workplace culture.
That's powerful. I tell you, it's needed. And so many, sometimes you think of things and you think things are needed on a couple of levels, but it's needed on so many levels. And I know even with the nuances of relationships and being in, first of all, working with individuals to work into organizations, that's a big step right there. It's a big leap, not a step, big leap. But there's so many layers when working with people, and then we have the topic of race as well and culture. And the importance of being able to unpack all of that and help organizations out. That's a pretty big feat to tackle.
It can feel heavy at times, but I think it can also be incredibly rewarding. And I think it's those moments that keep me going. When you're able to play a small part and helping an organization establish a healthier workplace culture, for me, I think that's what at my core, that's what drives me. That's what drives me. So it's complex and it can be complicated, but I love it.
Wow. Love it. That's powerful. I'm pretty sure our listeners have a lot of family members and friends who benefit from what you do and what people like you do. That's a powerful thing.
Yeah, it is. And, full transparency, it was not a profession I was overly familiar with until I heard about it and realized that for years there were these folks just like myself on the back end, sort of in the weeds, helping to create the kind of spaces that lead to more inclusive environments.
Right, right. Wow, and that so you went the extra mile to familiarize yourself with that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. And I can give a little context. So at the
yeah.
time, I was working in a large hospital setting here in Boston. And it's the first time that I ever fully understood how we're affected and impacted by the systems around us. So that could
Wow.
be our family, it could be the community, it could be where in this context, the workplace. But realizing that I was one employee amongst thousands and seeing how difficult it was to foster communication, that actually encouraged me to go back to school. I had my master's at that point, but it was that experience specifically that led me here.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. Well, I tell you, Enin, good thank you and good on you. And thanks for what you do. And
Yeah.
thanks for, what I just said, like we are, I said family members and friends, but I think a lot of us as African Americans and people of color, we benefit from that because that means you're helping to create transformation in the workspace. And that goes on every level. Like even, I think about places that we might even go to on a day to day just to do what we do,
Yeah.
and just stepping into those spaces and seeing, the benefits of transformation from what people like you do, we all benefit from it to some extent, So
Yeah.
good on you, man. I thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. And as I said, I mean, it can feel heavy at times, but I think for me, playing any sort of role in improving the human condition in any context um, gives me what I need to get through my day to day. I mentioned to the both of you, I wear a few hats. So as an org psychologist, I'm working with um, Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s. I'm working with local organizations, national organizations. I'm teaching, I'm publishing. And so for me, it really is trying to use this platform. Let me back up. So this again, 2020, I was coming out the doc program. That same month, George Floyd gets murdered, and it hits me the platform that I was just blessed with as a Black man, and it felt heavy. But at the same time, that was not a responsibility that I wanted to run away from, and I chose to lean in. And
Mm,
so for me, it's doing anything I can to further the discussion. Because I'm affected by it. We're all affected by it.
right.
Whether we own it, recognize it, or not, and regardless of how we even identify, we're all affected by it to some degree.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And B, you mentioned leaning into it, and it's like you're at the crossroads, and it's like you can lean into it or you can walk away from it. And on a day to day basis, it's easy. Just like you talk about human condition,
Yeah.
and that's important because having that heart, even as men, we don't always talk about things on the emotional level, on the core level, the heart, the emotions, and things like that. But on the heart level, having that conviction to say, you know what, I'm going to lean into it instead of running away from it because it's easy to run away from it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's one of those
Yeah.
underlying things, one of those underlying nuances, but to lean into it and go towards it and understand that it's going to change people. It's going to transform people, not even without even seeing the benefits of all that.
Mhm.
So to take it,
Yeah.
that takes faith and that takes
Yeah.
conviction and passion. So good on you, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. And I appreciate that. I'll say this, a thought that I had, and this is just in my own personal thinking, you know, um, leaning out was not an option.
Ooh,
was not an option. Like I literally felt like I didn't have the option to not engage. I could look the other way, but at the end of the day, um, that's not how you affect and or impact change. It's just not. And the first time that I ever shed a tear, or one of the first times I ever shed a tear over a news story again, was watching what played out in 2020 and the
Mm.
way that it affected me across all domains in my life. You know, home, work is the first time I realized in that way, you can't run from it. You can't run from it. All of us have a responsibility. I don't care what role you play. All of us have a responsibility to try to create spaces where we're bringing some level of awareness to what we're experiencing in the day to day.
Right. Mm. And
Yeah, I
so,
love.
Enin, go ahead, CJ.
I was gonna say, I love what you guys said about like running away from it. It's so easy to.
Mm.
I feel like sometimes either whether it's the distraction or whether it's like whether it's distractions or whether it's just the fear of the anxiety, right? Anxiety. You can try to run away from what you feel like you're called to do or what you were to do because you know the it's scary. It's like fear. It's a sense of fear. And I think the more and more like you continue to go after your purpose and your calling, even when it's hard, the more you're like punching fear in the face and the more you're confronting it so that you're building confidence. And I think it's such a key element you need just in anything because there'll be a point in time where anxiety happens or you might get scared or imposter syndrome where it's like you don't feel confident, you don't feel like you can do it. But the more you prove to yourself you can, it's just gonna build up your confidence and help you to pursue your business. That's great. I love it.
Absolutely. And CJ, listening to you, first of all, a brilliant observation, great point. And I think what surfaced for me just now is going back on history. And I'm talking about history on a global level. Historically speaking, the moments that folks have given in to fear have led to um, some of the most catastrophic events in history. These pivotal points in time where speaking up, speaking out could have made a difference. But folks in those particular scenarios or situations opted against it. And you know, causing what could have been squashed to become something far worse, far worse. So, like I said, we don't have the choice. We don't have the luxury. We have the choice. Um, but I would say leaning out is a luxury that we can't afford. I'll say that.
Mm. Well put.
Right.
Mm. You know, it's that's deep because you talked about history too, and what I think about is the opportunities of conversations. I mean, even in our personal lives, we can reflect that to our personal lives. The opportunities of the conversations we've had that we might not have had that would have made a difference in the situations that we were in. You know, but even talking to history, it's like I never thought about it like that. You know, and it talks about, you know, it reminds me of the power of conversations and the need of conversations.
Yes, yes. And thank you for so what you just surfaced now in terms of evidence-based research, um, dialogue and listening are the two most powerful tools that we have in any given moment to reach critical places of shared understanding. So when I speak of, I view dialogue as an equation, right? So if information is being relayed, information has to then be received, right? So with that said, it's that listening component that now becomes critical. Are we in conversation or are we having a dialogue? Because there is a difference. We can have conversations about the weather. We can talk about what happened in the game last week, right? A dialogue is a much deeper human interaction, and you know, it's my belief. I am of the mindset dialogue, and supported by evidence-based research, dialogue and listening, two most powerful tools that we have.
Mm. You hear that, CJ? Dialogue and conversation, the difference.
Mhm.
Woo!
That's
I
it.
hope our audience heard that.
Hope y'all replay that too, if anything, because it's real. Because you think about it, you can have a conversation about anything like that just happened, or a conversation can go any direction. Just you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
Hmm.
go left, right, switch, like you know. But
Yeah.
that's like dialogue, and just a deep dialogue is just like a like heart to heart conversation.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it gets mixed up, but it's heart to
Mhm.
heart, and you get to talk about emotions, how you feel, what's real, and things that sometimes it's not even addressed. You almost have to suppress it because it's not. You don't say that. You don't say those type of things everywhere. I feel like, and
No,
creating that space is so important. I love that.
absolutely. And so what you just did was underscored the notion that there's a risk involved, man. Because if we're going to engage in a dialogue, I might have to be open to hear some stuff I don't really want to hear, or 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 respond to a question I may not really want to respond to, right? Or maybe something I've never entertained. I know I'm going a lot back to 2020, but again,
All
another.
good.
Thank you, man, because these examples are just coming to mind for me now. But that became the first time that I'll say it. I have a lot of friends and people around me that do not identify as being of color, and that became the first time period that we were ever having conversations about race. The first time that I was ever able to share with them how I was experiencing situations that we had been through together, watching them have these aha moments like, wow, man, like I never knew you felt like that. And I'm looking at them like, well, how could I not have felt like that? Right. So yeah, I mean, I think when we think dialogue, um, you know, there's a measure of risk involved in a dialogue that simply doesn't exist when we're just talking with one another in conversation.
Mm. Whew.
Real.
Conversations could be more safe. Dialogue could be more risks.
Absolutely.
Woo! Mm. Value bomb right there. Right there. So Enan, we went back and forth a little bit on LinkedIn, and you talked about a research that you're doing, that you've embarked on, and we want to hear more about that. That talks about belonging in the workplace.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I stumbled on through dialogue in over the last year is the importance of belonging and the role that belonging plays. So let's break this down for a second. We have D and I, right? So we got diversity, equity, and inclusion, um, which conceptually take nothing away from the importance of diversity or the importance of equity or inclusion, or those three components put together. But I would challenge folks to understand you can include me in just about anything. Whether or not I feel like I belong, that's a whole different conversation. That's a whole different conversation. So there's this saying, and one of my mentors recently shared this with me. Um, Inclusion is inviting me to the party. Belonging is playing music that I recognize, that I connect with and to. There's a difference. So with this study, and don't mind me because I do have some notes up
All
on the
good.
screen. So the goal of the study is to define belonging. And this is the hypothesis. Belonging will have a direct correlation with people's comfort and ability to be themselves. Belonging will have a direct correlation to self-reflected job satisfaction, job performance, and job longevity. So what I'm looking to do here, along with my research partner, is interview 30 executives that identify uh, differently, that represent a broad spectrum of disciplines, and speak to them about how they make meaning of the term belonging. How does it show up for them in the day to day? Incidentally, all of these folks are leaders and are in position to have a real impact on their organizations. And so what we're looking to do here is really sort of take a deeper dive into the role of belonging. And incidentally, there's already been a few organizations that know of this study that are looking to get these results and hoping in some way to be able to incorporate these findings within reason into their organization's culture.
Mm, that's powerful. I'm like, I want to hear the results. I'm like, I'm standing on my feet, like, oh, I want to hear. That's huge because it's interesting because a lot of people, like for me, for example, like I have memories of being part of organizations where I didn't feel like I belonged, and that impacted my decisions in what I do now.
Yeah.
As an individual, as an artist, as a man of color, as a family man, and so therefore I made decisions based on what I experienced, and I said, I'm gonna go this direction because of my experience. So, like what you're embarking on, that's huge for a lot of people, and those things that go on change the courses of people's lives, literally.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that observation. I appreciate that. And what I can offer up is that almost 100% of this is informed by the experiences of young me. And when I think back on my trajectory, I was blessed, man. I was blessed with the roles that the jobs that I landed. But I'll give you an example of something that happened to me. I must have been, I think I was like 23, 24. And so I get this job. It's downtown Boston, State Street. I'm feeling special, right? Because I'm like every day I'm going to this like beautiful office, right? And I happen to be the first to ever hold that particular role.
Wow.
First Black man to ever hold that role, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm working this job, and I didn't realize it then, but years later I would grow to understand that inviting me in is one thing, but creating a space where I feel comfortable is a whole other thing. Because I don't think the environment was ready for me. I think their heart was in the right place. They recognized the need for diversity, but did they prime the environment to understand what it would mean for them to bring in a young Black male? First of all, age-wise, folks were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I just based on age alone, I represented something that they really hadn't seen before, right? So there was that. But then there was all the other things for me that surfaced around, like my racial identity, and to your point, Carl, I've moved through my trajectory with my early experiences in mind. They very much continue to shape and inform how I show up. I think I've done a better job as I've gotten older at trying to sort of not always allow it to completely sort of inform my perspective, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that it wasn't there to some degree.
Right. Wow. We got to have you write a book, brother. You gotta write that book, Eddie. We gotta read that book, man. I tell you, that's great insight. And I love when you said, they didn't prime, the environment, because I don't think about that, but I love how you show your emotional intelligence with that too. Like, it's not just thinking the best of it, but it's like you're breaking down the situation of what could have been, but just even looking at, what they didn't prime that time, and they weren't ready. So, but that takes a lot of emotional intelligence to be in a situation and recognize that. But if you can do that, you're able to make more of a change in that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm gonna take that with me. I'm gonna take that with me, man.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think belonging and being invited and belonging is so real. Like, you could be invited to like anywhere, but I feel like sometimes it's up to the invitee and also yourself to
Yes.
make yourself feel like you belong. Like, that's because that's real. That could literally block you from enjoying something if you don't feel like you belong. Sometimes that's a choice, and sometimes that's also because of the environment. It's not familiar, and we just got to get familiar with it and feel invited. So,
Yeah.
I like that point right there. I'm gonna try to. I guess I've never saw the two. I like what you do. You kind of have two viewings on something, and they're so true. It's so true that to be invited doesn't mean that you can feel you belong, and that's real.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll give you all an example. I remember I was driving to we were having this like all staff retreat, and as I got closer to the venue, um, I'm turning the music down that I had been playing as I was driving. It happened to be on a Monday. I'm already thinking about, because I knew like the icebreaker was always to talk about your weekend, and how I enjoyed my time on the weekend was like night and day to how most of these folks, I mean, at the time, you know, you know, I don't golf. I don't do, and nothing against, golfing or whatever, but what I'm getting at is like that my world was just very different, and I didn't feel like I could speak about it. So in a sense, I'm now trying to tease apart the bits and pieces of me that will best fit the environment. The problem with that is what happens now to me. Now I end up at the table, I don't feel right, doesn't feel genuine. I'm talking to them and I'm engaging, but I'm mindful the entire time of the disconnect between the fact that, like, I was just playing Rock Him in my car. You know what I mean? And I'm now in this environment, and I'm struggling to connect,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Right, right. And I can relate to that as an
Mm-hmm.
artist, even as an artist,
Yeah.
First of
Yeah.
all, shout out to Rock M. I'm just saying. I hope I tell you about Rock M, CJ. If not, show him on me. We'll have a conversation after.
What song would I know him for?
You would
my
know
guy
it.
Soul. Yeah, you'd know it. Yeah,
I probably have to
we'll
just hear
play
this.
some
Yeah, I
after.
don't know his name. I don't know
You
his
would
name.
know it.
We'll play
You
some
would know
after.
it.
Oh yeah.
You would hear two or three beats. You would hear two or three beats from two or three songs and be like, yeah, all right. Because you know what? Even if you don't know the song, it's been sampled.
Okay.
True. Very true.
Don't get copyrighted. We'll play it later.
Yeah,
You right.
Yeah.
I
I got a question. What motivated you to kind of take action on this research journey, like specifically on businesses and kind of helping them develop a sense of like belonging? Because this is real. Like I feel like this applies for like anybody in a work field, but also in the business field. And I want to know like what inspired you to kind of do that.
Because the conversation
Love
was
it.
not happening in those environments, and it needed to be. Like, I'm done with having a conversation happen. There's certain environments we enter into, you expect it in the community, you expect it in certain professions. Let's say if it's human services, where you're maybe doing home visits or case management or something like that. But it simply is not happening in the environments that I believe could also benefit from having these types of conversations, and having this level of awareness. And again, when I reflect on my own trajectory, uh, it's embarrassing, but I've been the first in more roles than not. So I mentioned to you, I was a therapist in a large hospital setting. I want to say that that particular clinic, outpatient psych clinic, had been around 50 years. I was the first full-time Black male. I look at the roles I play now. You know what I mean? Same. And so I think it's very much rooted in wanting to create space for the conversation, and recognizing my privilege, recognizing that I have the opportunity to do so. And so why not try to do what I can?
Love it. It's all off kind of experience and what you. So I feel like a lot of people do stuff because they like even like raising kids. Like I mean, I'm not a father, but raising kids, like you kind of give to like what you wish you had. Like you wish you kind of teach and go off it, like treat them like what you wish you had. And it sounds like to me like you wish you had that type of conversation. You wanted it. You wanted that type of conversation for you, but also you want to teach others about that because it's almost like it's not common to speak up. It's easy to feel shut down. It's easy to not want to speak up on things that it's obvious to you, but you don't want to like rain on anybody's parade. So
Mhm.
that's dope, man.
Yeah.
I love that's your inspiration. I love what you're doing. This is inspiring.
Thank you, CJ. I don't have kids, right?
Mm,
But there's a few folks that I actively mentor. And so for them and for yourself, I don't want you to have, man, those same experiences. I just, you know, if there's anything that I can do to impact change on any level, um, I owe it. I actually owe it to generations behind me to do that, like I remember sometimes, and this is crazy, man, I would feel lonely in a crowded room.
mm,
How? How?
Oof. Wow.
You see what I
man.
mean? Like I would be at these like retreats or these
Mm,
conferences or whatever it is, and this is true. I wouldn't have to, but as a coping strategy, I would go to my car. Or I would, even if I didn't have to go to the restroom, I would get up and go. Like, let's say if it's a conference center and the restroom's like down the hall, because I needed a break. I needed a break. I'd equate it to like a prize fighter in between rounds. You go to your stool, you sit, you breathe a bit, right? You compose yourself, you go back in. Yeah. And I wish I could say that these were practices of the past. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sit there and say that I haven't used that coping strategy within the last 2 years.
mm.
Think about that.
Right. Wow. This is home, man. I ain't gonna
Yeah.
lie. This is home. I could totally identify with that.
Mm-hmm.
Totally
Yeah.
identify. And even the theme of this whole conversation, it reminds me of, how can we leave the place where it's like being in your house. Mom will say, hey, leave that place. I even hear Teresa say with the kids, leave that place the way better than the way you left it.
Yeah.
So leaving this planet better than the way we left it. And I appreciate your leadership with being willing to pass on that legacy. That's what leaders do. And for me, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what, I need to be about this. I need to be able to have that leadership to say, I want to leave the planet a better place, specifically in this area. But this principle applies to so many other areas of our lives as well. But having
Yeah.
that care as a man, having that care to be able to lead like that,
Yeah.
so good on you. Any person, you know what I mean? But it just runs deeply for me as a man, as a
Yeah.
black man.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
mm.
Yeah.
In your interviews with executive level professionals, including business owners, have you observed any unique traits that exemplify leaders possesses in fostering strong sense of belonging amongst their teams?
Yeah. And so traits that come to mind in instances like that, they tend to be high in emotional intelligence. They tend to prioritize conversation. They tend to be the kind of individuals that if there's something that they suspect could help how do I say this? Could help foster psych safety in the environment while simultaneously helping the organization function optimally, they're willing to lean into those conversations. They want to know how their employees are experiencing the day to day. So, in the conversations I've had so far, that's kind of that's like surfaced as a trait. Um, incidentally, I haven't the folks I've interviewed so far have all been white men, and the
Mm-hmm.
ones that have offered up strategies and best practices have all had as a common thread the ability to engage in dialogue. And then the third trait would be that they all seem to be really good listeners. really good listeners, and not just in a performative way, but in a, you know what, I hear you. What can we do? And I guess that would be the fourth thing. They then open up opportunities to co-create.
Oof.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Co-create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another word that came to mind in my mind was curiosity.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
being
Yes.
curious and being curious and then being willing to do something about it and to be, part of the solution. And I love when you say co-create, man. Oh, such an
Yeah.
important now people got to be willing to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the people
Yeah.
that you've had the dialogue with were willing to, and that's what you identified. Wow, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. It's like collaboration. Like you get to kind of pick up pieces from other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like sometimes we all could get in the mode where it's like you're gonna do it yourself. You gotta be like your own motivation. But collabing is so essential, I feel like, in any world, because you get to come together, you get to build chemistry, you get to come together with another person, and you also get to feed off each other, like the energy. Especially if it's good energy, you can feed off each other, build each other, and take principles that they had and implement it, and they can take principles you had, and it just creates such a nice culture, and it brings a sense of belonging because it's like you feel more comfortable, you feel like you belong in that space. So yeah, I think collabing is very important. Co-create, like you said.
Absolutely.
Right. And you get to break barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
New heights. I like
New
that.
heights. New heights. I love it. Hey, that's the title of Aiden. That's the title of a book.
There you go. There you go.
I keep pushing this, Aiden. I keep pushing it.
New. I got another question. I say, like, what are some, like, so you mentioned like belonging and like like, you can get invited and like feeling that you belong, but I feel like another part of belonging is actually showing up, being present. What would you say are some key elements, especially for business owners, to feel like they can feel like after showing up, how can they feel like they belong? How can they feel like they belong in their environments?
In instances where folks feel valued, respected, psychologically safe enough to express themselves fully without fear of reprimand. So if we're thinking about a checklist of what the environment would likely need, and now I'm putting my org psychologist hat on, it would be these steps. Those would be among the key steps. So if you are a business owner, let's say, and you identify as, let's say you identify differently, right? But you're amongst other owners that may not, and or you're operating in a field where you're a rarity. It would be those components that would help you feel like you belonged to that community and to that organization. And if you're an employee at that organization, same.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I love when you said psychologically safe. That's, in our society, like that doesn't get explored a lot, and in my mind, sometimes it's because of fear, and even in our communities, even in the color community, that's even a topic that's not even talked about. It's talked about more, thankfully, now, but not, we have so far to go with that. But I just think everyone in general, so when you said that resonated with me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I feel like even like sometimes it's yourself too, like your self-talk that you have. Like, I feel like you can talk yourself out of feeling like you belong. Like, how it's because like life is fast. Like, I feel like every day comes very quick. So sometimes you can't really scale what you actually just did. I was watching this Kobe quote. He's talking about like sometimes like you look at like the whole mountain like that you're climbing, but sometimes you don't realize how much you really scaled. Like look at what you scaled. Look how far you came from when you started, where you are now. Like we can look at, oh, John's in front of me, like I don't belong here. But if you look at the mountain, you just scale like for yourself. It's so that's I feel like that's a key element in belonging too. You
It
know, just
absolutely is.
yeah.
It absolutely is, CJ. And you're touching on a really important point. So I'm gonna take it back to when I was a therapist. There's a direct connection between what you think, what you feel, and how you respond. So that being said, our thought patterns are really important. It's critical. Our thinking is healthy, because if not, how are we going to be feeling? So if you're walking around and you're telling yourself that you're not good enough, how might that make you feel? And in turn, how might that influence how you react?
Mm.
You know, so I just wanted to offer that up, because I think you are touching on something that's really important, but is often overlooked.
Yeah. Real talk.
It's real talk. It's real. Snaps for
Mhm.
that. You know, we used to be in the poetry clubs, you know. So I bring that into this show, Ian, and you know, I got to put the snaps up.
Is there a snap
Snap
emoji?
emoji.
If there is, y'all should comment
There
down
is. There is. Yes. If you are watching this on YouTube, do a snap emoji.
Mm.
You know, it's funny. I wanted to have one of these lights hanging out, because it's like the value bombs when they come. Just swing the mic. I mean, swing the light. You know, whenever one came. But my imaginary one. Enin, do you have any like success stories or things that was like, wow, that was surprisingly interesting, or things that were inspiring within organizations where you saw transformation take place?
Absolutely. And I can offer up an example. I'm being really careful here, because this is a real example of a national organization that I was working with. White male CEO of an organization that receives less than favorable feedback from a former employee about workplace conditions. This dude rolled up his sleeves and embarked on like a 6, 7, 8 month journey to
Oof.
figure out how he could fix the culture. And he started engaging people in conversations in different ways. And this is real. This is real. This is a human being that I have worked with. And he would ultimately serve as a catalyst for change. And in my view, he would become like the epitome of a leader, you know, in the process. Like, he would demonstrate inclusive leadership. If we're checking a box of all the traits of an inclusive leader, he hit every trait in that journey. And that organization is in a much better spot.
That's powerful. That's
Mm.
powerful. And it's cool when you can see the results of that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that motivated you to do more.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've shared this with him outside of the scope of my role. I actually thanked him for what he does, because I needed him to know that for the me's in the world, or the folks that look like me, because there's only a handful, literally, in his organization. I wanted to thank him for taking the chance, because it had to be risky, you know. Yeah,
Risky dialogue.
absolutely.
Risky steps.
Yep.
Makes me want to take. Yeah, I just want to take action after this. Like this is deep, powerful.
Right.
Right. I got a question. Another question. How do you believe that creating a sense of belonging kind of impacts the performance of a business owner? Like once you feel like you belong,
Good question.
How much does that impact a business owner? How much does that impact someone in the workspace?
So there are some very specific areas that benefit. So we're talking about job retention. We're talking about employee satisfaction. We're talking about employee productivity. We're talking about engagement. All of those areas impacted in a very real way, in a way that can be seen, visible. Mhm. Yeah. And that's research based areas.
Got you.
Mhm.
Mm, mm. I got a question. So I'm a business owner. I got employees under me. I want to make a difference. I'm hearing this podcast interview. Like, what would be some practical tips, and strategies I can take to to turn my business around where I can create this type of culture?
So I go back to the importance of co-creating. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. There's a fundamental difference between feeling like we're a part of versus feeling like something is happening to us, right? So simply engaging people in how they are experiencing the day to day through the scope of their individual lens. Let me back up for a minute. So when I was a therapist, when I was an active therapist, I focused a lot on relationships. I've been in my relationship 23 years, right? Made a lot of mistakes, and grew, right? Because we were young when we got together. One of the most important questions that you can ask someone is how they're experiencing their relationship
Oof.
and not making assumptions, right? So, for example, as a husband, I'd like to think I do a decent job, right, at being a husband, but I can't be um the barometer in that context. You'd have to ask my wife, what kind of husband am I, right? So to bring this in an organizational context, it's inviting folks to a conversation around how they are experiencing the day to day. What do they feel is going well? Where did they see opportunities for potential growth? But understand that once you open up that floodgate, you may hear some stuff that's hard to hear. So never ask a question that you're not prepared to receive the response for.
Got you.
Mm, mm. And I might say, prime yourself.
Yes,
But
yes,
I
yes,
took that.
yes.
I took that from you, and I took it. Oh man. First of all, I got to go ask my wife that question.
Well, no. So it is.
It's good.
I used to encourage couples. I still do this as a practice, right? So every few weeks, and at this point, I'd probably say, I don't know, man, maybe every month or two, we're sitting around just watching something, whatever. Are you happy? Are you happy? Right?
Mm,
Uh,
right.
but again, you gotta be prepared for the response. And so from a leadership perspective, it's taking time to check in with your direct reports. Don't make assumptions around how you think they're experiencing the day to day.
Mm,
And then take it a step further. Uh, okay, so this is the feedback. What can be done? Let's talk about that. You're inviting them into the space to now co-create the mutually agreed upon next best step.
mm. I love that. Hey, for our listeners, hey, that one was for me. I just, I had I had to ask about the spousal thing. No, these are
That's
powerful tips.
yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna say, CJ?
No, I said like I think quite like one that's creating space. That's creating a space that you know creates conversation. Whether it's the answer you want to hear or not. It's like it's a space that makes everybody feel comfortable. Maybe a little uncomfortable, but comfortable as well. It's like they feel safe. They feel like they're valued and their opinions are heard. And two, it's good for yourself because like evaluating myself, I feel like I'm a good person. Like I feel like I guess I don't think in my head like, oh my gosh, I did like the worst thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But to somebody else, like how am I impacting somebody else? I can't assume how someone's feeling. I can't assume how I'm doing in other people's eyes because in my eyes, like I don't think I'm wrong. I think I'm right,
right,
I'm self-righteous, you could say,
right, right.
subconsciously. So I think
Mhm.
making that space, it inspires me to do that with my friends and make sure they're okay. Um, because every day has troubles for you, yourself, but also for everybody around you. Like it's not sunshine and butterflies and rainbows for everybody else. So that's
Right.
a good space to create. And I just think us as, not to be selfish here, us as like colored people need to do that more. If
Absolutely.
not,
Right.
try to almost suppress that. If we're being honest. And I think that's a space that should be created anywhere you go for any
Yeah.
group of people that you are in relationships or friendships with, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, when I was
Mm.
practicing therapist, I would I'd say, okay, so like I'm holding this mug here, right? The only way for you to know what I'm actually looking at from my perspective is to ask me, because you can only see this side. You can't see this side, right? You're not going to know what's over here unless you ask me.
Yeah.
And
Right.
engagement. We can make assumptions. You can assume that what you see is what I see, right? But at that point, you're making an assumption.
Right. Right. One thing that came to mind too was, having a dialogue, it's it can be risky.
Yeah.
The question I pose to myself is, how can I make it fun? How can I make it upbeat? How can I make it a part of a way I can make it a part of my culture is making it fun, making it inviting,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
making it, and that, that kind of brings, that's a core of me. Like I like making things fun because when I find that when I do that, it invites people more and people
Yeah.
want to join more. And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, we all want to grow, don't we?
Yeah.
And it and kind
Ideally.
of ideally, and then reminding. But now I know there's some people who are like, look, I don't want that particular change. I get it, but we all want to grow. We all want to leave the planet the better place in which we left it.
Mhm.
So let's go in that direction. So I those things just came to mind. Having this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think making it fun. I think making it a part of the culture. I think baking space for conversation or dialogue rather into the fabric of the workspace.
I love that. You said bacon. I love that.
Yeah.
Bacon
Yeah.
space. I love that. And here's what I love because I do confidence on camera with people, and part of that is the speaking part, the public speaking, but being creative with your words. You said baking. That's like, let's
Yeah.
create this. When
Yeah.
you said bacon, that's like, hey, let's do this, as opposed to we need to do this.
Yes. Yes. And when we think
Mm.
about baking and we think about ingredients, uh, too many people, in my view DE&I as something over there, separate from workplace culture. What I'm suggesting is that they're one and the same. DE&I should be baked in to every single component: recruitment and hiring, career development, succession planning, marketing. It should be baked into every area of organizational functioning. It is not separate. It's an ingredient.
Mm. Woo. Y'all need to rewind it and play that again.
Loop it.
Yes. Loop it. So, Enin, if one wants to find you online, where can one find you?
LinkedIn, LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, man. I keep it simple. I think that would not I think that is the best way to get in touch with me. I would welcome the opportunity to connect with any of your viewers, particularly around any of these talking points that may have resonated, or maybe folks may want to hear a little bit more about. I am available. Just reach out, hit me up. I'd be more than welcome to have the conversation.
And we'll have your links up as well. So, for your link up as well, for sure. Oh, well, Enin, man, this was a rich conversation. And we have, I know I have some takeaways. I don't know about you, CJ.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Loop this back a little bit.
Yeah. Loop it back.
I thank the both of you for what you do. And the first thought I had when the both of you started doing this show, it's a beautiful thing. I had never seen this setup before. And if we think about the Black community and we think about fatherhood, first of all, Carl, you are amazing example, an amazing example of not just a father, but a human being, man. Like, I mean, whether it's in this setting, or I remember I'm sitting on the couch once, it was like a while ago, I'm watching Chronicle. I'm like, oh my God, that's Carl. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just like your energy and the people that you touch, man, don't sleep, because you're making a huge impact, and you got guys like me admiring you for that. So thank you, CJ. Man, you for me, you're an example of what we're actually doing right with our young people. You know what I
Right.
mean? And just so you know, man, I'm always here for you as well. All right.
Appreciate that.
I'm always here. All right. So just reach out. I got you.
Up the street.
Yeah, up the street. Yes, the
Love it.
connection. That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
There you have it, y'all.
Thank you both.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you would be so kind, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and or if you're listening to any of our platforms, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whichever one, please be so kind to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed the podcast. And we'll talk to you soon.